The first component I need to generate to create this effect is a spherical mapped background image that I'm going to use in the reflection mapping channel. So in the Sky and Fog, go to the Skylab, Image Based Lighting tab, use HDRI image, open. I'm going to use one of Horo's HDRI images. The medium resolution one here will be fine because it's only going to be used as reflection, so you won't really need to see any extreme detail. At the moment it's a little bit bright for my purposes, so I'm going to lower the intensity here before I export it. So I'll load it to 2 so you can just only see the lights really in this, and I need it in spherical map format, and I don't need it to be HDRI image, so I'm going to export the image. Bitmap is fine, so I'll call this SM1, and remember to set it to spherical before you export. So I'll just go out of there and reset the sky and set the sky up for what I need for this effect. So for that I need to have the atmosphere off, set that to fully white, set the global ambient to fully white, check the sky dome color is fully black, so hold the Alt key down and click on that and you can see that it's 0, 0, 0. Go into the Skylab, sun and moon, disable the sun moon shadows. They're not necessary because this effect is going to be achieved through just reflection and transmission and scattering, and so we don't need the sun either. So I'll check out of here, and speaking of reflection, I'll select the infinite plane, modify this material so that the diffuse color is fully black. So select color and diffusion, they're fully black, use metallicity and reflection to create a black mirror. And when you have blurred reflection, the specular halo luminance value, or lightness in the HLS, will determine the level of blur. So I'll just leave it at its default state for now. So this is going to be a dark, blurry, reflective surface down there. And modify the document setup so that we've got a 1:1 ratio, because we'll be using premium effects for this render. And I'm going to bring in my subject. So I've got here in the library some models that were converted from the Stanford Scanning Repository by Horo. I'm going to use this bunny. It's a fairly low resolution mesh model, which might be an issue because I want to use curvature to add detail, but we'll see how it goes. So there we go, there's our bunny. I'm going to rotate it a bit and then narrow the field of view of the camera, lower it down so we can point it right at it so you can see the full effect. And then I'm going to view it from the side and just check that it's actually sat on the ground. So I don't want it floating. So there we go, that's on the ground there. As things stand then, the material is slightly ambient, but there are no other light sources in here, so that's good. We're in regular rendering at the moment, and we can set most of the things up with regular rendering and then switch over to premium effects when we want to fine-tune the effect. So the first thing we need is the material for this bit, which is going to be closest to the camera, and then we're going to have another bunny, the same model, set away from the camera, that's going to act as an absorbing layer. So I'll do the outer layer first. So this is going to be the outer layer, and I use 3 channels here. So if I hold the control key down and click on this blob here, C blob, it'll load in 2 channels first. So this means that this component can be used to mix this component and this component, that one and that one. And the other thing I have to do is control the transparent color here with blob D, and I'm going to use curvature for that, so hopefully bring out some detail in the model. I'm going to set the diffusion down but leave the diffuse color as no grey. I'm going to have white there, and the ambient color is going to be controlled here, so another control key and click on that down. And this one I'm going to have as the alpha channel from this, controlling the ambience alone. So it's color mixing here, transparent color here, which is going to be curvature, and ambient control here, and I need a hypertexture to overdrive the ambient effect. But I'm going to set this down to, let's try 4 to start with, and then overdrive it through a hypertexture here. So it's not the most straightforward material. Oh, and the specular halo, hold the Alt key down, I'm going to set that at full value, so this allows most scattering when it comes to blurred transmission. So now we just need to set these things up. This one's the easiest one, so it's going to be picture, go into the texture source editor, click on an empty blob, bring in the spherical map I've just prepared, check out of there, make sure it's set to reflection map, and we're ready to go on that now. And then this one is going to be the hypertexture, so I'll hold the shift key down, click on the name, go to basic and select check blue and set the hypertexture up as I have in other videos. So go into the texture source editor, just need the alpha output for this at the moment to set things up. Go into noise, select distance squared, mode is minimum, octaves 1, frequency -1, and that's now created a highly negative output. I want this overdriven, so I need a positive output from this. So I'll just check out of that and drag that into component 2, use difference here, and then select component 2 and set this to nothing, set the octave down to 0. So that will now create as a highly positive output, but a bit too positive. So I'll drag this nothing component to component 3, select component 3, set the filter to sine, and reset the sine, then flatten the sine out and lower it down, and that will allow me, when I use multiply in this blend mode here, to control the output level. So what I'm looking for is some colour in this, but not many stripes. So that will actually be a positive output outside the normal range that it's possible to generate. So I'll just check out of here now. You see it's gone nice and bright, and you can also see this red colour has come through. Now whatever colour I want in this, when I set this up, I can be done through here. So if I wanted this to be sort of like a, I don't know what colour should we go for? Let's try blue. Okay, right. So I'm not seeing any colour output there yet, but if I go, let's see, I think if we go linear interpol, I can get the colour out from that component there. So I can still leave this as it was. So it just allows me to use this to generate a colour and to generate a high output. So you can see how bright these lights look now and how bright that colour looks. So if I just set this down, obviously it's a bit too much and I'm not getting any effect of this, unless this has got alpha scaling set. So if you don't have alpha scaling set, you won't get the effect, but once that's set, then you can have the effect, and you're looking for that sort of level of output, which is slightly overdriven to get these lights glowing in the reflection map. If you just use 100 ambient output, which would be the normal level you would get, you can see that it's quite dim in comparison to what you get with the overdriven. So that's where the hypertexture here comes in handy. Now I'm going to use another hypertexture in the absorber, so I might as well save this. So click on shift, click on the name, and I'm going to add that to the library. So I just call this hypertexture. There we go, as a hypertexture in there. So I'm going to call upon that in a minute, but I need to set this up so the balance is more towards the lights and less towards the blue. So in this filter here, we'll start again, hold the shift key down, and I'll start with basic check blue. Okay, alright, go into here. So I just need nothing on this final component. Click on that component, go to nothing, check out of there, go to sine, reset, and then I'm just going to use this to generate an alpha output that favours the component that's giving us the light. So that's up here somewhere. When this is white, it gives it more light, so you can see we've got more highlight in the background now, probably a bit too much, so I'll go 0.5. There we go. So that's more reflection than anything. Now what's missing at the moment is our transmission, our transparent effect. So we'll give it some transparency now and select a transparent colour. So I hold the shift key down, click on the name, we'll start from check blue again, just as a standard starting point, go into the deep texture editor, and here what I shall do is set that to nothing and then drag and drop that into there. So I've got 2 bits, right, and I want output of one to be one thing and the output of another to be other thing. So if I'll set these both up to linear interpol 3 and then use blend curvature and then go, let's see, dark to light. So that's going to give us a curvature effect in the transparent channel here. So as the geometry of the rabbit changes, then you'll see some changes in the transparent colour. So that'll just emphasise the geometry a little bit, should add a bit of interest. You can't see it on this sphere because it doesn't have any of that change in geometry. I'll just check here and make sure we've got fine concave and hard edges. So we're getting close now to having this set up. The exact values may vary yet, and I might want to consider the impact of refraction here. So I won't mess with that just yet. We'll just see what we've got at the moment. So yeah, the reflection's looking quite bright, and you can see that the resolution of the model is due to the curvature effect is creating these little triangles, which was a bit of a concern. So possibly I might have to resort to having a darker HDRI image output and a more detailed model to work with. So right, I'll go into the material lab and add that material to my library for the moment, and we'll deal with these two things together. So I'm going to launch another instance of Bryce and then load in the HDRI image and export it, but I'm going to have the intensity at 1 this time. So I'm fine tuning it now for the effect I'm looking for. So sky and fog, image based lighting, use HDRI image, open, get horrors HDRI image, turn the intensity down to 1, export the image. Of course it's going to vary depending on the HDRI image, so you just have to try it out. So I'll just overwrite that. Yes, that's done. Okay, back to where I was with the rabbit. Let's get rid of the rabbit and save the text anyway, and try and find a more detailed model to work with. Let's see, that's big, 206 megabytes, probably a bit too big for what I'm after. 101, yeah, and 50. So let's go for this statuette. It's going to be more detailed. Right, again, it's come from the Stanford scanning repository, and I think Horror used MeshLab to convert it. So I'm just going to move the camera around a bit so we get the thing in scene. So yeah, that's going to be quite detailed, I think. And then I'm just going to, after I've finished positioning this, load in the material that I've prepared and saved a moment ago. That's this blue one, and I'm going to load in the new darker HDRI image, which is there. So that will be less bright on the highlights. And what else was I going to do? Oh yes, we'd set the curvature up, so it's a matter of having a look how that looks on the curvature front. So it's possible that the colour transition needs to be a little bit more subtle on the curvature front. So I'll just go back in here, and if I select the same blue and then hold the Alt key down, I can just use this to lighten it so that the variation isn't so dramatic as it was last time. No, probably best to try it out and see how it looks when it's got the absorber layer in and when we're using the blurred transmission. So if I press Ctrl C and Ctrl V, that should copy that model. It may take a moment because it was a fairly large model, and I'm going to modify this material now so that it becomes my absorber. So for that I'm going to reset the material, and the ambient colour wants to be the inverse of this blue, so the complementary colour, which is going to be a sort of a yellowy colour. I'll just guess at it for now. And I'm going to use negative ambience. So I'll just check out of here now and check back in. You see that it's cleared all the slots there. I'll get rid of diffuse, switch ambient on, hold the shift key down, click on the name, and go to where I'd saved my texture, wherever it's gone now. Right, okay, so under basic I'd save my hypertexture, so I'll load that in now and modify this. If you remember, it was negative, highly negative, difference makes it highly positive, multiply reduces its size to a manageable level. I'll just turn the colours off so you can see the output here from the alpha. If I drag this multiply component over here and change this to multiply, and then just switch off component 3 by clicking on 2 in that button there, and now multiplied this highly negative value down to a moderately negative value, and if I've got alpha scaling set, I can then use this to make a light absorber, and its absorption is controlled by the colour output here. So because it's negative, it's controlling which light colour it's absorbing. So by it being the complementary colour, it matches the output colour. To get a proper negative, it's actually quite involved. Horror's written a little program to this. You can just do a very basic idea of like grabbing this screen and inverting it, which I'll do that. I'll do it in PaintShop Pro now. So I do a screen grab of that and bring it in here, paste as a new image, and then do an inversion. Adjust negative image. Now you can see that it's a sort of a yellowy colour that is the inverse image there, and then you could pop that in the other window and use the colour picker to grab that, which I'll do that now. You see, I wasn't far out with my guess. I guess I've done this a few times. Right, where was I? Oh yes, I was setting this up. So it's going to be fuzzy, and we don't need it to cast shadows. It can receive shadows and self shadows. That's not really a problem, because it's, and you can see probably just that the outside of this has got a blue tint. And if I check out of here now, at the moment both these things are in the same exact geometric space, which causes problems for the render engine. So we need to move this, but I need to move it in such a way that we don't get to see it, and the answer to that is to use camera space. So if we select camera space from this little arrow here and then select Z, well, depending which way you've got things set up, Z should be the front and back from the camera, and then just move it very slightly away from the perspective camera, only a little bit, and then you'll have the absorber in there set inside, well, slightly offset behind your model, and then it becomes a matter of setting things up. So this is a regular render mode, and we obviously haven't got the scattering effect, so things are not working for us just yet. So we're now going to premium effects, set it down to 4 rays per pixel for previewing, choose blurry reflection, blurry transmissions, set the maximum rate depth down to 4 to speed up rendering, and we'll see what effect that has. So you can see those dark patches have disappeared now. So it now becomes a question of getting the absorber level right so that it leaves us with a bit to work with. So I'll select the front at the moment. Let's try some more diffuse. So this makes it look more plasticky. So we can try a bit of that and see what effect that has. But of course we've got no real diffuse light working on it. So I don't know whether that's, I don't actually know whether that's doing anything at the moment. I haven't really considered that. Sort of had some faith that it did something, and then maybe it doesn't, unless I introduce another light source, which will throw things, slow things down considerably. Anyway, I'll not get too distracted by that because it just sort of works. So I'll go into the material for my absorber and increase the ambience there to 10, so that'll absorb more, pull more light into the model. I didn't seem to have a lot of effect there, so I increase that still further. That's my hypertexture, which is negative, so that should pull a bit more light away. Okay, I'm going to need yet more negative output there, so to achieve that I'm going to lift this up. We'll get more stripes, so it'll make it more strongly negative, and it'll absorb more light. It doesn't seem to be happening, does it? I managed to do something wrong here. Fuzzy effect, ambient should be negative. Let's see, I'll make it more strongly negative. See, that's pulling it away. Maybe the colour's too pure. I'll just check that this has not actually turned out to have no blue component in. Alright, bring some blue component in. That'll make the effect a bit stronger. Oh, there you go. So it just turned out that when I colour picked it, it didn't have any blue components, so it wasn't absorbing the light as much as I'd wanted it to. I'll set this down again to where I was before now. You can see that this effect is not that easy to set up. Alright, let's try 2. Right, and now the outside is not looking very bright. You can see it's actually brought in sort of a yellowy effect there because of the setting up of this colour. So I'll just go into here, reduce that, but still have some blue. And then I'll go into the one that's in front, and I don't think I really need diffuse there. It doesn't really matter. I'll increase the ambient output, so I've got a bit more light scattering on the outside to work with. Okay. Again, this yellow has appeared, which it's due to the interaction between the positive output and the negative absorption. But, you just have to have a bit of faith with this in some ways, because it's difficult to appreciate the effect when you're working with such low resolution previewing. I'm going to modify this colour a bit, see how that looks, and modify this blue perhaps on the final output and give it a bit of red in there. If you start working with pure colours, because the extreme ranges, you can get some strange effects. So I don't know whether this is going to work or not. Is this yellowness that's coming in there. I'll just modify the fuzzy material again. Maybe I made it too strong after I'd set this up, so I'll set that back down to the sort of range that I was in before. Just need to see some stripe in there like that, and turn that up to 4, compensate for turning that down. Okay, I'm not seeing the yellow now, that's good. I'll take it up to 10. Probably just a bit strong on the absorption. There we go, it's coming in again. So the amount of absorption and also the amount of ambient you provide to drive this material, bearing in mind the scattering is also scattering light in from the reflected background and the very bright sky in this case, will all influence this effect. If you want to really find out what it's going to look like though, you need to turn this up quite a long way, and it's going to take some time. So I'm just going to render a small area, and you can see that it's going to be time consuming, and until it's done you really won't know what the effect is going to be. So let's give it a go. Like I say, I'm not entirely certain now I've had time to think about it that we need this diffuse value. I'll keep tinkering with this, but I don't actually see any difference in the final effect on the preview. And possibly it would if with different refraction values, because then you could bring in metallicity into the effect and maybe grazing angle reflection. So I mean, if I change this up to 133, make it glass-like, that's going to introduce a bit of grazing angle reflection. But at the point you do that, it's going to slow the render down considerably, because you've generated a reflecting surface, which may not be such a good thing. So if speed of rendering is the main concern, and I would say in this case it is, then I would avoid any refraction values over 100. Anything under 100 is fine, because you don't generate any extra reflection with those. And as I say, this diffuse is probably irrelevant unless you introduce another light source, at which point then you would be reducing the efficiency of the render, but you would probably at that point also create a slightly nicer effect. So let's have a go at that while we're here. Let's create a light source for a highlight and place it in our scene. We've got the render option set up, so let's just do it at 4 and get some predictions on render time. So that's with 5 minutes 42 with that light source thrown in there. Get rid of that light source, so that's just working with the diffuse on that. And 5 minutes 43, so it's not too bad. So I think I'll use Control Z to bring that light source back in. That'll work with the diffuse on there, and it should give it a slightly more plasticky appearance. Bring it off to one side. Of course, it's not casting shadows, so yeah, let's bring the shadow casting in. So I want this intensity to be 100. Anything below that, just going to reduce the efficiency. So here we are with the light source and shadow casting. That's doubled the render time effectively there, though as I say, it might improve the appearance. So let's see what we're going to get if we give it 256 as a prediction. I think it's going to take quite a while. Look at the speed of that, sluggish. So if I aim to perhaps reduce the area of this and maybe let's reduce the resolution, what can I get away with? We'll get a reasonable render time. Let's try 64. Of course, the lower you go, the more noise you're going to get in your image. So there's a drawback. But I only really want this image for the initial frame of the video that I'm making, so it doesn't need to be much larger than this. Let's see what the render time it's predicting. So yeah, 1 hour 17 minutes, not too bad. You can see the blurred reflection there just about if you sort of squint at it, and that would be halved then to about 40 minutes if I got rid of that light source, but then I would have no reason to have diffuse in the material channel there. So there you go, you can do it either way. I hope you found that interesting, and that it'll answer some questions, and that you'll experiment with this effect in your own renders. Okay then, that's the end of the video.